Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to the episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. It was the height of the 80s. How radical can your car be? Showing up at the car shows with your corduroy short shorts, your low top Vans, and your white socks pushed down. Maybe you just got done combing your mullet and put on your Hawaii 88 mesh shirt. Those were the 80s. One of the things that I loved about the 80s was it didn't matter what year your car was. Early or late. If you had a Super Beetle, you could put a rag top in it. If you had a oval window, you could put 8 spokes on it. It didn't matter. Cool was cool. Shaved door handles, polished alloys, cookie cutters, 5 spokes. Anything and everything was on the table. As the scene started to evolve, what became the hot ticket was who could do the most radical modifications to their cars. People did shaved door handles, one-piece windows, and that evolved into monochromatic paint jobs, scallops, pinstripes. Heck, even Eddie Van Halen gets guitar-style paint jobs on their Volkswagens. And the boys in Bakersfield were pushing the limits. Now, of course, no one can forget Chris Addington's Rodbuster Ghia, which is the king of all show cars for Volkswagens. But do you remember the baddest squareback ever built in the roadster days of squarebacks? That's right. I'm talking about George Delfino's 71 squareback. Exactly my point. Most people didn't care it was a 71. All they knew is that was the baddest squareback built today. On this podcast, you'll hear a lot of things that you didn't know about that car, that he actually built that car 3 times, not once. And it went from a cool SPL cruiser with 412s later to 415s in the back to he goes full-blown show ballistic and builds a roadster squareback. Gets it featured in the magazine and then redoes it again. So there's a lot of interesting insight that you get on this week's episode of Let's Talk Dubs when we talk to George Delfino, who owns Shockwave, the raddest squareback ever built in the 80s and the 90s. Heck, probably still even one of the raddest ones built to this day, and I'm sure it's inspired hundreds of cars from that point forward. But first, we got a couple sponsors. Are you looking to get some disc brakes on your bus on the down low? How about a narrowed beam? What about converting your bus to IRS? Well, let me tell you what. The boys over at Type E Motorsports got your number. They've got a disc brake kit that allows you to go buy off-the-shelf factory-available parts at any local auto parts place and adapt disc brakes and wide 5 to the front of your bus. For only $500, you can pick up that kit that takes your 63 to 67 bus and converts it to discs in the front with ready-to-go off-the-shelf parts that you purchase at your local auto parts place. How about a narrowed beam? A U.S.-made narrowed 4-inch link pin beam, $215. Or to do IRS, $950 for a complete easy bolt-in IRS kit. He also does full bus beams, end-to-end, rotor-to-rotor for $3,000 turnkey. So if you guys want to get some of your stuff decked out on your bus or your bug, go check out Type E Motorsports. Now, Brian's been on the podcast before, so you can check him out in episode number 105. Check him out at type-emotorsports.com. They've got a lot of suspension parts available, all U.S. made and ready to go. So hit them up at type-emotorsports.com. Guess who's back? VW Trends Magazine, that's who. Bringing back the fun in magazines. A true cross-culture of the VW hobby. VW Trends was always willing to step outside and bring you the latest trend in the VW scene. And you could be a part of this historic relaunch. How, you ask? Well, go to VWTrendsMagazine.com, and there are several different ways that you can help relaunch this magazine. That's right, this is a grassroots effort put on by the VW community itself, relaunching one of those fun magazines that was bringing the culture to the market. They've got subscription packages all the way from $1.99 in the Founders Club, all the way to donate $5 just to do your part to help get this back on the scene. This magazine for the people's car is for the people, and it's by the people. So now you guys can be a part of history and contribute to help get this magazine relaunched. First issue's coming out shortly, so stand by to get more details on that. But for now, go to VWTrendsMagazine.com and support the relaunch of VW Trends Magazine. Make sure you guys support the people that support your favorite VW podcast. Well, without any further ado, guys, let's get into it this week with George Delfino and Shockwave, the ultimate squareback on Let's Talk Dubs.
A Volkswagen is a nice station wagon to have around the house. The 1974 Volkswagen, covered by VW Motors security blanket.
Okay, everybody, so today I'm really excited. I've got George Delfino on the podcast today, and George is one of those guys that was out of Bakersfield that in the mid to late 80s, they were like pushing the bar in the VW customization. And so, George, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you.
Hey, the way that we always start the podcast is, what is your VW story and how did you get into Volkswagens?
Wow, that was a long time ago. I'm thinking 1984. I bought my first Volkswagen. It was a 66 Carmagia hardtop. And before the Volkswagens, I was big into car audio. Well, still was, and still am. But it was car audio, so I got my Carmagia, put a stereo system in it and everything. It was cool. It was Porsche Caribbean Blue, and that was my first Volkswagen, and it was a great car. But then one day somebody pulled out in front of me and it got totaled.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I think I owned it maybe 6 months.
And this was like a typical kind of. And how old are you at this time?
18.
So this is a typical kind of 18-year-old build. You get a car, put a cool paint job on it, and your focus, like a lot of us when we're young, is the stereo. You're building the car around the stereo, right?
Yep, exactly. So after that thing got totaled, then I bought the squareback. It was a 71 squareback.
Right.
I think I paid $1,500 for it, and that was an 84 also. So yeah, just started with that car, and wheels, paint, motor, just complete build, and a big stereo. And then of course that I used that car for a lot of sound offs back in the early 80s. And I drove it as a daily driver and then showed it too.
And that's the first feature where the car was featured to that degree, or this is before the feature you were doing the sound offs and all that stuff?
This is right before that feature.
One of my first jobs when I was young was car audio installation. So you're a man after my own heart.
Right. Well, I used to own a car stereo store.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
And looking at the squareback back then, it's funny because in the 80s, like today, everybody's really searching for like early cars, but in the 80s, yes, it was like whatever VW you could get your hands on.
Pretty much.
You just customize it, and it's a late model squareback, which a lot of people, when they go back in their mind's eye, they're thinking it was an early square, but it's a second generation squareback.
Exactly.
And it's, looking at the feature, it's super rad. It's got, it looks like, is it 412s or 415s in the back of that thing?
There's 412s in that one.
412s. Now the whole system was, what was the system? Since we're going to geek out on stereos, what was the system breakdown on that bad dude?
It was all Orion power back then.
And that's a lot of juice. And I don't remember, I don't know.
1,800 watts.
And I don't know if back then they were using capacitors back then.
No stiffening caps at that point.
Yeah. So it's like.
The car had 3 batteries in it.
So you running batteries, then you've obviously got to have a battery isolator off the generator. Did you even do an alternator? I don't even think they were doing alternator swaps back then.
It was a generator. I think I would switch my generator once a month.
It's insane. It's insane. Because I'm going to dip in some guilty pleasure car audio. Was that thing in like SPL sound offs and stuff?
Yes. And Orion used to use it for a display car at the CES show in Las Vegas.
So did Orion hook you up with deals on the equipment?
Yes. Yeah, they did. And back in the early 80s, we almost bought Orion, my dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were looking for financial help at the time. So yeah, we took a look at it real close, but decided, yeah.
And then I think Orion ends up selling out. Did Orion sell it to DEI, or like, because a lot of companies just sold out to DEI, right? And then DEI ended up being like Chinese-owned company?
Yes, I think that's pretty much what happened with all that stuff. But yeah, in my stereo store, we sold Precision Power in Rockford Fosgate.
Well, that's funny. I don't know if you remember the car. So I recently purchased a car from the 90s, which was Chop Rod, and it was Jim Moto's red chopped Bug with the white rag top. and
Yeah.
it was a Fosgate car. Like the whole thing was Fosgate stuff.
Yep.
And I purchased that car like about a year ago, and like literally all the Fosgate stuff was originals, like OG Punch. And
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah, we used to sell that back.
the pieces that were
88.
left were like artifacts, speakers all blown out and all that, surrounds all deteriorated and everything. But we're gonna get her back in her good graces, and I want to get all the audio equipment back into it, but get it kind of more modern style stuff.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm a collector. I have original Punch 45 still wrapped in plastic in boxes.
Really? I mean,
yeah, from the mid 80s.
To dip into stereo stuff a little bit, what do you think? I remember back in the day, guys would run like I was a big 1 amp guy, like trying to see how much stuff you could run off 1 amp.
Yeah.
And it's like, we've seen the trends come and go in the car audio industry. Back then, it was like a Punch 45 was not cheap, you know, and it was like, and everybody would be like, oh, you had the guys that had the majestic 1,000-watt amps that weighed, a pound and a half, and it was 6 feet long.
That Punch 45 was definitely a main staple.
Yeah, and here in Vegas there was a company called Import Audio that I couldn't afford anything, so I would just go there, window shop, and look around, and it was always, I think the stereo guy was, at least in my opinion, the stereo guy was always Alpine head units.
Yep, that was, Alpine head units.
Yeah,
that's what we sold.
Yeah, Alpine head units, and then either Fosgate
7909, I believe that was the ultimate head unit.
Yeah, I was so stoked when I got my first 7166. I remember two knob cassette deck, and I was just like, I got an Alpine. my world had changed, but that was like, it was some of the greatest times because, you had guys that were amazing people by how much stuff they would run off a single Punch 45.
Right. We did 24 speakers of a single Punch 45, and one guy's car used to show it 0 to 50 class.
And it was insane the kind of power those things would put out.
Yeah.
And so now let's not get too far into the car audio. We'll dip back into that, I'm sure, later. Now, so you build the 71, you do the graphics. Like, how long does it take you to get this car built like this? I mean, and for a young kid, I mean, how are you getting this car so nice so quick? Because the 71 before, when it's first featured, it's a nice car.
Thanks. Yeah. That was probably maybe 5-month build, probably.
Really? But it was all hands on, like constantly every day after work, or I mean, you're just going at it every day.
The poor car was all original when I got it.
But I mean, it's one thing to take an all original car, but when you take an all original car and turn it into a legendary car, that's an equatable transition, I believe. Right. And now go ahead.
Had no idea that what the car would have done, the impact it created. Had no clue back then. We're just building a driver.
And I want to talk about, you started off as a driver. You build it for car audio because it's the perfect surf wagon for like tons of speakers, and that whole rear package area is like, it's the perfect surrounding for like an SPL machine, right?
Yes.
Other than no power, like no 12 volt source of anything of value, right? And so you build this car into that. You're starting to go into car audio events. When do you meet the tipping point where you're like, that's it, I'm building the baddest squareback ever?
We did the shows with a car like that. It pretty much won everything I put it in the squareback class back in the day. I'd say like 1986. The car pretty much, we redid the stereo system from that feature. I think it had over 4,500 watts in it. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was even bigger. It had 415s in it. I mean, it was like to the point where it was like, okay, driving this car on a daily basis became a real hassle. You're putting it on chargers every night.
Yeah.
It's got to the point where it's like, okay, time to get something, air conditioning, the whole regular vehicle. So got a wild idea one day. It was sitting there. I used to keep in a C-train at my dad's house. So I pulled it out one day and we took a Sawzall and whacked the top off it.
With no plan, just like, I'm going to do something different.
Yep. So let's cut the top off.
That's
And
insane. I mean, it's a finished driving show car. I mean,
I
daily
know.
driver / show car.
I know. So then we drove it around a little bit like that for maybe a month, just playing around with it. And then it was like, let's start from scratch.
And the decision that you go to make it, like the first build, who are the parties involved? Because I think Steve, how do you say Steve's last name? Nitch?
Connect.
Steve Connet's involved in the first build.
He owned Volkswagens in Bakersfield. And so I did the car, painted, lowered it, did all the suspension, everything was done. I took it to Steve, built the motor, did some wiring on it, and painted the graphics on it. It was already blue when I brought it to Steve. And then went and did the upholstery and then did the stereo.
And so that was kind of the shop in Bakersfield, if you're a VW guy, that you're involved with.
Yes.
Now you decide, okay, I need to do something different. I feel I've done as much as I can with the squareback. The top, because at this point, mini trucks, they're cutting the tops off, their target top and everything. And then you're like, I'm going full blown, like I'm going to meld both worlds together of like mini truck and Volkswagen, which is essentially what it almost looked like. It was like a roadster squareback with a tonneau cover.
Yeah, as long as they didn't call it a roadster pickup.
Right. And it was just something that was like,
well, some other people were cutting their tops over the time, but they were still leaving it as a 4-seater.
Right.
So that's what we wanted to do, build a 2-seat roadster.
And when you decide to do that, like you just show up at Steve's place, like, hey, I cut the top off. Let's redo this whole thing.
He came over and helped me cut the top off in my dad's front yard.
And what does your dad say to this? He just sees you put all this time and effort in this car.
He's just shaking his head, trying to figure out what the heck now are you doing?
And you got 2 teenagers out there just like with the saws all like a perfectly good car. Like, well, I hope you guys are going to be able to put that thing back together.
Yeah. Yeah. And as soon as you cut the top off, the pan sags. So,
yeah, you find out that the hard way, like the doors won't open.
All of a sudden the doors don't want to shut.
Oh, wow. And so now what's the process on building it back now? So now it's like, okay, top's off. There's no turning back now.
Right. So I think we did a lot of the build at Addington's house.
So Chris was really a part of helping you guys build that thing. Cause obviously Chris has been in building cars and hot rods and I've been to Chris's place and
right.
He's got car problems. That guy has got like,
yeah, he does. He's into it.
And he's a real do-it-yourselfer guy, like from welding to body work to whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah. He really didn't he just kind of let us use the place to do a lot of the main work on it.
Uh-huh.
He kind of was just doing his thing at the time with his cars. And Steve did a lot of work over the years on the Right Stuff Gia and stuff. Now, back before it became Rodbuster.
Now, let me ask this question. You guys being in Bakersfield, you're almost as bad as us guys in Vegas, with the exception of like Bakersfield's been known for like hot rodding and drag racing.
Right.
But the VW scene, like you guys are it essentially in Bakersfield, right? Like you guys are the guys in Bakersfield. Now, what's it like when you guys are going to Southern California for shows? Or are you guys going to a whole different level of shows? You know what I mean? Or is there a competition between Bakersfield and Southern California?
You know, I didn't really, it never really felt like there was competition between them. I mean, it seemed like it was just a big Volkswagen scene at the time. And, you know, everybody was just, you know, stoked to see other people's builds.
Just pushing the bar was like really like, who's doing something cool.
Yeah, because we did a lot of stuff in Sacramento and then all the way to San Diego pretty much, covered the state.
So on this car, you take it and you cut the top off, so it's now it's like, okay, well, what are we, because you're really starting with no plan, right?
Right.
Chris is the place where you can work on it because he's got a shop at his house and Steve's over there helping you and you guys are kind of putting the things together. Now, the graphics on this car, I want to talk about a couple things, the graphics and the tonneau cover. the graphics are like out of control. I mean, there's got to be a couple weeks in just painting graphics on this thing.
Yeah, Steve, he drew and drew and drew, and and I'd go over and we'd tape and lay things out, and it would be like, change your mind, change your mind, change your mind.
Really?
It was hard to finally get something that I was like, yes, that's it. But it took a while, in the grids and the pan, how it came out and everything.
Yeah, 'cause this thing's graphicked through the fender wells. I mean, it's graphic.
There's nothing untouched on that car.
Now, did you pull the pan off the body off the pan?
Oh yeah, that car was like set up on, I want to call it
Like a rotisserie?
Exactly. It was on a rotisserie. Yeah. So everything was, that car was completely just a shell.
And I mean, you guys at the time, a lot of the stuff you're competing against are cars like the car that I own now, which is not a full blown show car. Like, it's a chopped car. It's color matched wheels. It's been painted and detailed, but it's more simple than anything else. And you always had like the simple show cars that had like a carpet kit covering the wiring.
Right.
And a lot of these cheater moves, right? And then you've got your car, which is like full custom, like nothing has been untouched. So Steve did the graphics on it?
Yeah, Steve did the body work, the graphics on it. He did a lot of the on hands of that car.
And the tonneau cover was fiberglass or steel?
It was fiberglass. And Steve and his dad is like super talented, and his dad helped Steve with a lot of the tonneau cover and then also the belly pan. Wow.
I mean, that car is there's so much work that's gone into that. I mean, even the hydraulic struts or the struts that are on at the time are pretty cutting edge, because cars just start getting that in the 80s.
We had billet stuff on this car before billet was even thought about.
Well, you guys
look at the steering wheel on it. Everything was all handmade on that thing.
And where were you guys getting who was doing the billet stuff? Was that all stuff coming from through Chris?
No, that was Steve made all that parts on that car.
Really?
Using Chris's mill. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, because it's almost like, obviously we've got Chris's car, which is just like billet explosion. Like there's, and there's not one thing on the car that's not billet, right?
Right. On the Rodbuster, yeah.
Yeah, on Rodbuster.
He was building that when we were doing this one.
Yeah, and so looking at the motor on this car, right? So the motor's you've got a geared pulley setup with, again, a generator on a center mount fan shroud.
Yeah.
And what size is it? Still a 1776 with the 48s on it at this time?
It's a 2180.
So now it's a 2180, and it's got the center mount with the aluminum and the side mounted distributor. Now the geared pulley setup on there, how'd you guys, who built that?
I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to figure out I don't remember exactly where we got that from, but it was just something that we found. I was like, gotta have that on that car.
So it was pre-made and you were able to figure out how to get it on there.
Yes.
Nice. And the motor, so that you go through, redo the whole motor, redo everything, because it goes from now pancake to upright.
Right.
And when you're building this car, you're no longer driving this car around.
No, that's we call them mirror cars at that point.
So this, because I've seen, when I interviewed Chris with his car, he doesn't drive, like the car starts and runs, but he's never driven it, and it was a purpose-built show car. Now, what pushes you to the point of like, where's the inspiration come from? Like, we're just gonna do a show car. Now we're just doing a full-blown, like, because this thing is graphic. I mean, I can't imagine the time you got just in the paint alone.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, there's a lot of time in that. A lot of thought went into that. I used to drive it at the shows, though.
Oh, did you? You'd unload it and cruise it around the shows?
Mm-hmm. Yes, like at classics and different places like that. Had to show off that hot rod motor.
Right. Now, did you guys do custom underneath pans on this to kind of smooth everything out on the bottom?
Yes.
So are those are fiberglass or steel?
It's fiberglass.
And now the first
It's
show, go ahead.
It's an actual fabricated cover
Oh, that
that
actually,
fits the pan perfectly.
oh, nice.
Yeah. You can actually take it off.
And you're saying Steve's dad is like the brains behind that because he's like a master fiberglass guy?
Steve's dad is a very talented guy. Unfortunately, we lost him, but yeah, Steve had a great eye. Steve used to work at my stereo store.
Oh, did he?
After Volkswagens, yeah. Steve was just a very talented guy.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, what I'm because now Steve owned his own car, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a notch.
His notch was Future Shock, right?
Yes.
And so the two of you guys in Bakersfield, so does he start building that once he starts getting hyped building your car? He grabs a notch, builds that. Was he building it before?
I think his car, he already had it finished.
Oh, really?
His car was around when my squareback was the first time that we did it.
It was already done at that point.
Yeah, he was done, I think, in 85.
Wow. And so his dad helped with a lot of the glass work that's on that car as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, he did a lot of work on that car. Those dashes were really cool. That it was a kind of a partnership, I think, between Chris and Steve on those SKS dashes.
Oh, so the SKS dash, those came out of that whole Bakersfield area, right? That's where they were kind of come up with.
Yes.
Yeah, because I noticed the dash looks really similar. That's in your car and in Rodbuster, they're pretty similar.
They are. It's a modified dash to fit the squareback.
Now, you build this car, go through everything you do. What's the first show you take it to?
Famosa.
So Famosa at that time, was it a huge VW event or was just an IASCA show, or ISCA show?
No, it was a Show for Gold series show.
So was it
Volkswagens?
Just Volkswagens?
Yes.
And how's the car fare first time out?
Best of show.
So
everywhere it went.
So everywhere the car goes, you're getting best of show, and
yes.
the excitement, like all the hard work you're now paying off with all this coming to fruition. Is that your goal, is to get that event, or do you have a particular show in mind where you're trying to chase the top award?
Built it I wanted Al Martinez's inner show 7-foot trophy. That's what that car was built for.
At the Jamboree, for the VW Jamboree?
To win that, yes.
And did you get that trophy?
Yes.
And what year
I
is that?
look at it every day in my garage.
Nice. And what year is that? That's 1980, 88, 89?
Let's see. That is probably 1990, I think.
1990.
Yeah, because nobody really, if you look at Shockwave in the photo shoots, when RK shot it for Hot V-Dubs, and then you go look at it later on in 89, the car was completely redone.
From 1988 to 89, you redid more things?
Yes. The car got trailer damage going to, I think it was Buggerama in Sacramento. And so if you look at the car originally and then you look at it in the later pictures, if you look, the windshield is completely redone. It's all laid back. The vents on the rear quarter are all removed. The graphics are all enlarged around the whole entire car, completely redone on there.
You redid all of the graphics?
Yes.
Whoa.
The car got repainted. And the taillights are completely redone to a real custom. There was a taillights. I think Chris did those. They were stacked red plexiglass.
Oh yeah, no, I completely see it in the there's a picture online with a girl in a black bikini, and that's version 2 where you've sloped the windshield back more.
Yep.
And you've got the like the smoked rear taillights here. And now I'm
Yep.
looking at, I can tell the graphics are different. How many people picked up on the changes from when it goes in 1 year?
I don't think anybody really picked up on the changes. We never really said anything. Just kind of wanted to see if people would really notice it
That's insane.
on their own.
Yeah, because I'm looking at it and I'm like,
big difference.
well, I'm jumping back and forth between pictures A, pictures B, whatever, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, and then I'm never really taking a look at it, and now I see pictures with some dude detailing it with some super bleached hair.
That's me.
And that looks like it's from the Jamboree, this one, because you've got a full wheels off set up with chrome jack stands and all that stuff. And I don't know if this picture could be more perfect 80s than anything else, with like the bleached hair and the chrome jack stands. I mean, this is full on. So that's interesting that you redo completely the graphics. There's actually a 2.0 version that was never featured in the magazine.
Exactly.
So the magazine features our first version, and then there's a whole nother version of it. And I've never even seen people pick up on that online.
No one's ever picked up on it.
That's insane. Yeah, because now I'm looking, the windshield's completely different. The graphics are totally different.
Yep.
And did you remove the front bumper?
No, this got bumpers on it. They're just painted. Yeah. They're just color matched.
Yeah, they look like that. They look like they're almost invisible. But yeah, that's insane.
The bumpers were custom made for that car. Steve made them.
That is so crazy, because I'm looking at this now and I'm like, I'm toggling between two pictures and I'm like, holy cow. Like in the magazine feature, it's got the factory taillights on it. Yeah. And the Jamboree picture, it's like, I mean, that's a lot of work to redo that car.
Tell me about it.
3 times. The car's been done 3 times now, 3 or almost 4.
Yeah, exactly.
That is insane. And
that was just something nobody ever caught on or knew about.
Wow, breaking news you heard here on Let's Talk Dubs First, which is the reason I love doing the podcast, because there's so many things behind the scenes that you never know about.
Exactly.
And when the car is damaged, I mean, is this an insurance claim, or this is like, well,
no insurance claim. Exactly. Back to the drawing board.
And just like, you know what? I want to kick it up another level.
Let's make it better.
Yeah, because you're seeing, when you come out and you debut your car, you're like, man, I got the graphics, I've got this, I've got that. And then someone's like, yeah, but you got stock taillights and your windshield's just been cut. And then you're looking at stuff that Steve's doing and Chris is doing and all these guys are doing. And it's just, in that whole arena, everyone just keeps pushing the bar.
Exactly.
And what is so insane, the most insane thing I think, is the wheels are like the stock ATI VW 4-lug. They're like an aftermarket wheel, but it's like that's the most untouched thing on the car other than a polished set of wheels, right?
Never left. Yeah, it was on there since day one.
That's insane. And one of the things that I thought was interesting when I was interviewing Chris, I said, Chris, your wheels do not look like a custom wheel. They look like a factory wheel. And he says, yeah, they're SVO Mustang wheels. And then I just machined a little thing. And I'm just like, the craziest thing is like these full blown, out of control, radical customs. And then the wheels are like, nowadays it's like wheels make a car.
Yes.
And back then it was like, okay, the wheels are chrome, they're shiny, moving on. Let's check out the graphics. Let's check out the tonneau cover.
I really like those wheels. They were just different. I've never seen them on anything before.
Yeah, they're an aftermarket wheel that was popular like in the racing guys, because they were a lightweight wheel, but not a lot of not a lot of people ran those wheels.
Nobody did.
So you show the car and you get your Inner Shows trophy in 1990 at the Jamboree down in. And I was probably, the first Jamboree I went to was 1989 Jamboree, because I'm here in Vegas, and so I'm like on an island,
right? Cool
VWs, like Southern California is like the Mecca. Like you show up and every car that's in the magazine is out there on display. And so you get this trophy. It's 1990. Where are you at with this car? Because the interesting thing is, I don't see any audio equipment in this car.
There's none.
It's insane. Like you're a huge car audiophile and you build this car and now you're just like, I'm taking trophies. That's it. This is going to be the baddest squareback built. And when you build the baddest squareback, it gets scratched, it gets damaged, and then you're just going to make it even badder. Like, we're just taking this back to ground zero again and redoing this again. So now you're really passionate about the car show scene. You get out, you get your trophy. What's the next thing that happens with the car?
Well, it's been to a lot of shows. It won at Autorama in Sacramento. It was invited there.
Up against everything, not just Volkswagens.
Yes, exactly, which was really cool. Type 3 Day was really something that I was real passionate about, winning that trophy, best of show.
Yeah, because in that time, right, you have Type 3s are a little bit of an outcast. Like, everybody's building bugs. And
right.
The Type 3 guys always never seem to get their due, right? Which is to the point why they even had a Type 3 day. So Type 3s can get recognition because sometimes, you know, especially when things are people's choice or whatever, everyone likes bugs, and Type 3 is not everybody's cup of tea. And I got to be honest, one of the reasons why I got into Volkswagens was because of Type 3s. There was Type 3, like, to me, it was like a surf wagon. And all I could think is like, man, you could put 415s in the back of one of those, you know, because that was my inspiration. I was a bass head from day one. Like, I just sit there and my first experience was, you know, seeing a Volkswagen, this peach colored squareback pulled the apartment complex I'm living in. And it's just, this thing is just booming, like boom, boom. And I'm like, what? Like a meerkat popping out. And I'm like looking for this thing. And here comes this peach squareback with white scallops coming through the parking lot, just rumbling. And I'm like, I need one of those, you know, because I certainly couldn't afford a new Blazer, like the new S10 Blazers, which was the modern day version.
That's what I drove when that's what I bought in 1986, the S10 Blazer.
Isn't that crazy? It's like, that's the modern day
stereo in that.
Yeah. The modern day version of the squareback is the S10 Blazer, you know, that like, that could have been your tow vehicle for this dude.
Yeah. We built a 72 Chevy Blazer 2-wheel drive.
Yeah.
And it was precision power, and it had, I think, 6,000 watts in it or more.
Oh, get out of here.
Yeah, it had 48 speakers in it. It was insane. It was painted like a precision power amp back in the day when they did the graphics on them.
I think I remember it.
If you went to any of the sound offs or the finals in Arizona, you saw it.
You know, well, you know, one of the like, I was such a car audiophile. It's affected my, you know, the things that I have. I also own a '65 Buick Riviera, and the reason why I got that car is
Great car for stereo.
In Car Stereo Review, Jimmy Ray Vaughan had a lime green 63 Riviera that he had in Car Stereo Review, and it had a Sony CDX 2001 on the sun visor, and it had JL audio subs.
Yep.
And I was like, I blew up my Volkswagen, and I said, I'm done. I'm getting one of those. And I didn't even know what it was. I was like, I'm just getting one of those, and I'm going to get one. And to this day, I still have my 65 Buick Riviera because I got mad, sold my Volkswagen, went and bought a Riviera, and I've got a Pro Touring style Riviera sitting in my garage. That's still not 100% running on the road. And that's
cool though.
But it's like
another project.
It's all that passion that comes from our generation of like picking up magazines, which is our Instagram of yesteryear, right? Like, that's where we got our constant visual stimulation of like what's happening in different parts of the country, you know?
That's it.
And so let's talk a little bit about your car audio stuff. So you're so into, let's finish, let's kind of round out, because there's a process that's going to happen here, I think, where you get the car, you take it to some other shows, you win at Autorama. Now you're competing against other level cars. When do you decide to retire the Volkswagen?
I think that Jamboree show was the last show it went to.
Really?
In 1990, yeah. It might have been pulled out for some local things here and there, but other than that, I already won everything I could possibly win, all from 88, 89, and 90.
And so you're kind of like, all right, there's nothing more I can do, and I'm not going to rebuild it a fifth time.
Right. And we used to have a saying, there's nothing older than last year's last year's show car.
Right. Right. So what happens to the car? You just kind of park it in a C train?
No, it's I just put it in my garage at my home and car cover over it, and then start it up about once a month, and that was about it. And then somebody, I wish I could remember the man's name, but anyway, they got a phone call asking would I sell it, and I was like, for the right price, sure. So we talked a little bit about it, and he called me a few times later, maybe a couple months later, and then never heard from the guy. And then probably 6 months went by, and all of a sudden I get a phone call. The guy is heading to Bakersfield with a trailer wanting to pick up this car.
Wow.
And I was like, okay.
So
to me, it was like no use to me anymore at this point.
Yeah, it's just kind of sitting there. It's like you've been there, you've done that with this car.
Right. And Volkswagens are kind of fading out.
Right. The scene's kind of starting to wane a little bit. And now, especially now, you at this time, are you running your stereo shop?
Yes.
So now in the world of stereo shop, it's like, okay, I'm finding you're looking for a cool car, a cool chassis to put a stereo in, like something cool, something big, something different. Billet's all the rage right now. Everything is peach and tangerine and all these crazy colors are happening. Everything's monochromatic. And this squareback is like, like you said, there's nothing older than last year's show car.
Yep.
So dude shows up out of nowhere. You don't remember his name, the guy that bought the car?
I don't. I can't remember that man's name. He was an older guy. And
where was he living?
He lived in Diamond Bar, California. And he had a Volkswagen collection. I think he had 27 or 28 Volkswagens. And he wanted that car for his collection.
And it's kind of hard. I mean, how is it for you to part with that car? Like, it's one of those things where, like, I don't need to sell it. I don't have to sell it. If I sell it, this is the number that I'd be like, okay, well, you must want it worse than I do. Because
exactly. That's what it came down to.
And when the car's leaving, is there any sense of like a little bit of back and forth, or you're now kind of moved on emotionally? Like, I'm ready for this money. I'm going to build this next thing.
I already had my Blazer. We started building my 72 Blazer in 1988.
Yeah.
So I already had that thing underway. So that was something behind the scenes we were building at the same time. I still had my squareback and was still showing it. At that Volkswagen Jamboree show in 1990, I had my Blazer there also.
Oh, nice.
In the Precision Power booth for that show.
That's rad. So what's the name of your stereo shop that you had back in the day?
It was called Research and Development Mobile Audio.
Research and Development Mobile Audio. And how long do you have the stereo shop for?
From 88 to 92.
Because the tough part is once you open a stereo shop, 5 more people are open stereo. There was like a heyday in the car audio world too.
Bakersfield had like 3 major player stores, and then everything else was just whatever.
Because out here in Vegas, we went from there was like 4 stereo shops out here to like 1 within in that same time frame. Like in the mid 90s, it was like everybody just goes by the wayside.
Exactly. Because
you get these guys like Audio Express show up in town with the $1 install and all this kind of stuff, and they take all the bread and butter work, and no one's going to make it on custom installs. You know what I mean? Yeah, we built a lot of show cars.
Really? Back in the day. Yeah, and we had a lot of cars go to the Nationals, and it was fun.
Any of these cars get in the magazines? The car audio magazines?
Yes.
I'm going to have to research that now. I'm going to have to pull up the magazines that
go to Installation and look at Installation News. I think it was 1990. I think it was. My Blazer's on the cover.
Oh, nice. What's it called? So is it Car Audio Installation News or just Installation News?
Installation News.
So you sell the car.
And never see it again. Ever.
Never see it again. Don't keep the guy's number, nothing. You're just like... the
guy was pushing 70, I think, when he bought it.
And so the car left your position, and it's still intact somewhere.
I have no idea. I hear all kinds of rumors. They've seen like at a park. Somebody said changed the wheel. Someone said they repainted the top. I've heard all kinds of things, but the car's never surfaced.
let me ask this question. If that car were to come back, come back around and you had the chance to buy it back, would you buy it back, or that chapter's closed?
I thought about that, and that chapter's closed.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things. Like it's like the ex-girlfriend syndrome, right? It was the best thing ever when you had it in your memory, and then you get it back, and you're like, that's a lot of work, because you're going to want it to be pristine, and it's probably not pristine.
Right. I'm sure it's not, and that's why it's probably not servicing.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, I'm sure between Facebook, this podcast, and all the things that are going on, because this car is really, with this 80s resurgence coming back, and a lot of us guys that are in our 40s right now, we're out there digging out cars out of the from the late 80s, early 90s, and we're finding these cars that were like our motivation cars,
right.
And buying them. And I just drove the rag chop, or chop rod as it's called in VW trims. I just drove that car this morning. So, it's just one of those things where it's like, and there's a level of respect you have to have for those cars. Your car was on another level, and it was a not to be driven really car, right?
Right. Yes.
And then, like the car that I bought, it was a real looker. It was definitely something that got your attention. It looked cool. There was a lot of stuff that was hidden because the guy drove the car. So there was, it still has the original VW wiring in it that's been quite radically modified to some degree. And, some of these cars that we're tracking down, there was just recently Andy the Paint picked up he picked up that fuchsia colored Ghia. We just saw that happen.
Dennis Hyde's Carnegie.
Yeah.
I made that happen.
And where's that car out of? Is that car in Bakersfield too? No.
Yeah.
Is it
in Bakersfield? Really? Dennis, me and Dennis have been friends since high school.
Man, you guys don't sell anything in
He kept that car this whole time, and that Andy posted something on there, showed a picture of that car, and said that was his inspiration since he was 13 years old. So I just kind of said, "You want that car?" And he was just like, "What? Are you kidding me?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll call him up right now and ask him."
And so what's crazy is that he's kept the car for this long. And I think it's a testament to what these cars meant to the guys that build them. Like, it's not even a monetary thing. It's like, you want the car to go to someone who's going to appreciate the car.
Right. That's what I told Dennis. I go, there's the guy in England that runs your car. And he's like, "Oh," I go, "You want to sell it?" And he goes, "Yep."
Yeah. Because to some point it's just sitting there. It's just, it's not really your thing anymore, but it's part of your history. And the last thing you're going to do is just, let it go to somebody who's not going to really appreciate what it is. And there's something to be said for someone that wants to buy your car the way you built it and just keep
exactly.
it.
Yeah. And Steve painted that car. I came out of Volkswagens.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And what's Steve up to now?
He lives in, I'm trying to think, Mesquite, Nevada or something like that.
Oh, get out of here.
Yeah.
I'm going to hunt him down. That's about a 40-minute drive for me, man.
And he's still doing cars and stuff, but he worked for Townsend, which builds a lot of braces and things for people. So I think he might remotely still work there. We keep in touch on Facebook and stuff.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look him up, because he was kind of the guy making some of the VW stuff happen back in Bakersfield back in the day.
You definitely need to put him on your podcast.
Yeah. No, I think it's this whole thing, for me, I'm looking at it. I look at Bakersfield as like this real weird anomaly to me. And the reason it's this anomaly is because I see Bakersfield as like the desert. You know what I mean?
Right.
But going there, if you're going there for any kind of car culture, the car culture is super strong in Bakersfield. Like that is,
it is.
That is a hot rod place. And like it's really, really, a lot of stuff came out of Bakersfield,
Yeah.
So
a lot of them.
Yeah. And just pushing the bar for so many unique builds that came out of there. So,
right.
So you sell all that stuff, you get out of the VW scene for this time now, because you've built a car to a point where it's like, you're not really enjoying it and I'm going to do a little bit of mind reading here. A car audio guy loves to be looked at and loves to get the attention from his booming system. You know what I mean? And there's this whole part of it. And then when you get a car that's just, it's a driver, it's not fun to drive with no music.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so now you're building a Blazer with this nice PPI setup in it. I remember the car now. It's coming to my mind. It's painted like the PPI amps.
Yes.
Yeah. With the triangles and all that stuff.
Yep.
I've got a set of those amps in
Do
my
you
Riviera.
really? Right.
So now.
Yeah, this thing's got handmade 18-inch woofers from Cerwin-Vega. Used to be a Cerwin-Vega tester.
Did you really?
Yeah. I was real tight with Cerwinski's back in the day.
That's insane.
So this thing had Stroker 18s in it before Stroker was even a woofer that you could even get your hands on.
The Stroker was it was like a double stacked voice coil for extra excursion.
It had the adjustable axis on it.
That's insane.
Yeah, I had those in the 80s. That thing.
That's wild. Do you still have the Blazer?
No, I sold it to the Precision Power Rep back in the day. He bought it. Pacific Coast Marketing bought it, I think, in 1995, I want to say.
And now, okay, that transitions nicely into our next segue, which was your next car, your next Volkswagen that you build.
Yes, that 66 Carmen Ghia convertible.
And what's the story on that? So now you sell the Blazer and you're like, I want to build something else.
I bought that car in 1997, and it just kind of sat around.
And what was
forever?
What was the genesis to like? You know what? I'm just going to build this Ghia.
It pretty much that was it.
And I mean, because you're a VW guy. I mean, the crazy part about being a VW guy is and you've been in clearly because you've built a bunch of different types of show cars and stuff. You've been in a couple, and being in Bakersfield, there's a lot of different car hobbies, right?
Right.
I've explained to people a lot, and some people get it and they don't. And it's like Mustang guys are Mustang guys. Corvette guys are Corvette guys. And there's these hybrid guys out there that a lot, I started as a Volkswagen guy and I love Volkswagens, but I really I've got my Riviera, I've got a Corvair, I've had Typhoons and Cyclones, and I just kind of love a little bit of everything,
Yeah, I had a 67 Chevelle wagon Pro Tour car.
Did you?
I built 74 Ford Bronco, all kinds of different vehicles. Really big into Harley Davidsons and motorcycles. I've been doing the motorcycle stuff since 2004, and I've had two different bikes and magazines.
And the Harley stuff, what gets you motivated to start doing Harley stuff?
Years ago when I was young, I used to race motocross, so I really enjoyed motorcycles. And then I got to the point where it's like, why not? Let's try this. And made a lot of new friends in the industry and had two different bikes and two different magazines, and it was a lot of fun. And they were show bikes.
Nice.
And then, but after the Volkswagen stuff, I started racing jet skis in 93 to 97.
Like stand-ups?
So that kept me, yes, and sport boats. So I did the Budweiser Jet Sport Tour for 3 years, which is a national tour that, took you all over the United States, 10 rounds of it. And that really kept me busy for a while there. But once I stopped doing that, the Harley started coming into play.
Yeah.
And I had that Ghia sitting there. And the original guy that painted my first version of my squareback, he painted the Ghia, did all the body work on it and everything, pulled off the pan, the whole 9 yards, completely started from scratch on that car.
And being in Bakersfield, you've got your network of people that you can count on to do.
Actually, no, network's all gone.
Really?
At that point. Yeah, because that's 2006. So Bob Koch did a lot of work on that car for me.
Oh, did he? And he's down in Acton, right? So
yes.
Wow, that's incredible. So that car you decide to build, and so that what's the breakdown on that car? What's the motor, and does that car have an audio system in it?
No audio system. 1776. Dave Harner built it from Bart's Parts in Bakersfield. The upholstery was done down in Southern California. The top was made in Southern California. And then Bob kind of put the upholstery back in it and did some wiring on it, and done deal.
And then
did a refurbished steering wheel for me.
Now, do you still have the Gia? How long did you have the Gia for?
I want to say I think I sold it in 2011.
And do you know where that Gia went?
It went up north, and then it came back to Bakersfield, and some girl drives it.
Oh, so it's back
as a
in
daily
Bakersfield.
driver. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So now the big question is, do you have any other plans for any other Volkswagens?
You know, I want to do another squareback. I want to do an early year one.
Yeah.
Maybe like a 66.
Yeah.
And
sure.
I've got the system already built, sitting in just all the parts and pieces collected. I got a Power 1000. I want to put in it the 25 to life version.
Right.
So I want to do that in there.
Nice.
I got the Fuchs alloys. I got 2 full sets of those sitting here.
So you're ready. You're just looking for the right squareback.
I just need to find a car that's got a good body, decent body on it.
Right. So if any of our listeners out there have a nice line on an early squareback to line you out, and you're early, when you're saying early, are you talking early 60s or anything 68 and earlier, or 69 and earlier?
69 and earlier.
So 69 and earlier, a nice solid squareback, complete, something that's not rusted, that's got straight panels on it, that you can do another quick turn and get something back out there.
Yep, that's what I want to do.
Nice. Well, hopefully we'll get some people to reach out to you from the podcast, and
that'd be cool.
Man, I think. Listen, I'm super stoked to get you on the podcast and talk to you about about the history that you've had, because Shockwave influenced a ton of people. You know what I mean? And it's really one of those chapters in the VW history that this car, just like Rodbuster, it's like sandwiched there. Like if you're going to your top cars of like the craziest with graphics and detail and all that stuff, this is in line with all those cars just because of, the era it was done in. And I don't know if that era is ever going to come back. You know what I mean?
I don't think so. I
mean,
don't think that people put that much emphasis in the Volkswagens like they did back then.
Well, what's crazy, there's the level of detail is pretty close to that now, but it's more subdued. Like the colors are it's more factory colors, but it's like the cars that Buddy Hale's building and Pip's building them, and Bob Cook on the East Coast. These guys are building cars that have just got crazy levels of detail. And
that's awesome.
But they're more like the average consumer looks at it and doesn't see all kinds of custom mods to it. So,
right,
man, listen, it's been great to have you on the podcast, and I definitely love to get you back on when you're getting ready to bust out your next build. And
okay,
well, I tell you this, when I'm coming through Bakersfield next time, I'm going to give you a heads up. I want to stop by and meet you, and just shoot the breeze with you for a little bit. Maybe go to lunch or something. So, man,
sounds good.
George, it's been great to have you on the podcast, and I'm sure this won't be the last of us hearing from you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being on.
You got it, man. If you like that podcast, and I know you did, make sure you go to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review, and also share this podcast with your friends. We love when you share this with your friends. To support the podcast, go to letstalkdubs.com, go to the store and pick up some merch. Get you a fly hat or a cool t-shirt, but support your favorite podcast so we can continue to keep bringing you guys more and more awesome episodes. We got plenty more coming up, so make sure you guys have lots of time to soak up the knowledge that we're going to be bringing to you from right here in sunny Las Vegas, Nevada. Until next week, guys, later.
A Volkswagen is a nice station wagon to have around.